Hey, Bibliophiles, let's break it down. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Justine, the author of You Watched in Silence, a chilling, atmospheric, psychological thriller that blends queer horror, influencer culture, and the deeply unsettling nature of silence itself. Justine is a career ghostwriter whose work has been featured on NPR, and this novel marks her powerful debut under her own name. Her storytelling is sharp, immersive, and unafraid to interrogate the darker corners of the internet fame, identity, and power. This book doesn't just ask what happened, it also asks who was watching and why did no one speak up. But Lee, thank you so much for being here today. It is an absolute honor.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so happy to be here.
And I know we were just talking about a little bit ago, but I actually got an arc of You Watched in Silence early, and when I found out after that it was your debut, I I was so amazed. I literally had to go in your DMs and tell you that this was the best debut I've read since The Silent Patient. Um, so now that it's been published and it's been out in the world for a few months now, how does it feel?
It feels great. A little overwhelming. I still remember getting your message, by the way. I get readers in my messages, but I think I literally posted that on Threads because, like, since The Silent Patient, like, I was honored. But no, it feels great, different. I think the greatest difference is just that, like, with ghostwriting, obviously, I write a book and I put it out in the world, and then I never think about it again. And with my book, I'm still thinking about the marketing and how it's being received, and so that it kind of never ends with your own book.
Yeah, and so what could you kind of walk us through what was the inspiration of You Watched in Silence and making it your own?
Yeah, so um, if it wasn't clear, I'm not a fan of family vlogging. So that was a clear inspiration. But honestly, I just kind of had this idea one night for the ending, which seems to be how I write my books backwards. I kind of have a vision for what the end is going to be, and then I'm like, oh, I need to write this book, and then I go from the back forward. So I knew, and I won't say anything obviously, but readers will know what I'm talking about. I knew that moment. I knew that was going to drive home the point I wanted to make about family vlogging and parasocial relationships, and everything kind of followed from there. I don't even remember how it hit me, and I don't think I ever do. I think I just get these ideas one night and I'm like, oh, I must write this. It's the same for my other book that comes out in January, Nothing Even Happened. I just knew the ending that was going to make my point, and all the inspiration kind of happens from there.
Yeah, and honestly, when I was doing some research for this podcast, when I saw like you've already announced your second book, I was like immediately like, where do I pre-order? Like I have to read it. And I think it's interesting because I think for our genre like thriller, um, the standalones, like it's really special to be able to write these books in completely different timelines, worlds, generations, and settings. And so I'm super excited for that one coming out. I already have it earmarked.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it is also nerve wracking as an author, and it's something I didn't think about because I technically wrote Nothing Even Happened before You Watched in Silence. And so I'm nervous about it for that reason because I think if I had You Watched in Silence in my head, I might not have written a post-apocalyptic thriller. I might have stuck with like the domestic thriller so that like readers would know what to expect, and um, have a jumping off point for my work. And now I feel like I'm like throwing people into the deep end. Like, this is very different, and I hope that you like this one as much as You Watched in Silence. But I had my book signing and my launch party with Kate Alice Marshall, and she's obviously jumped around genre wise, and it's worked out for her. So I'm hopeful that readers will just kind of resonate with my writing and my kind of contemplative style, and the genre jump won't matter so much, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think with You Watched in Silence, like it was purposeful because, a quarter of the way halfway through, I'm like, okay, I think I have an idea of everything that's going on here. And I did, but then that actual reveal at the end of something that's like a layer beneath that's even more sinister than you even expect. I know that really rattled me, because even my handle, Mama Bear Bibliophile, like I made an active decision not to post my children very frequently. Um, and so I had just come back to book social media land, and I picked up your arc, and it was almost like this reaffirming, like, yes, this needs to be a broader discussion of the pros and cons that can come with this. Um, and so I just feel like You Watched in Silence was a beautiful way to convey that in a way that breaks it down for people to actually have a conversation.
I
Because
love
I feel like you were targeted and it was done extremely well. So whatever your inspiration behind the next book is, like I can't wait to see because I know you're going to communicate it well.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means so much to me. I do feel like that's my goal as an author, and hopefully my strong point is, and I have no criticism against any author that is not this way. I've heard other authors say, like, look, I'm writing for fun, I'm writing for entertainment, and I'm just putting out a story that's going to be exciting. And I want to do those things, but I would never write any book under my own name, obviously, not as a ghostwriter. But I wouldn't write any book unless I had something like very strategic to say. So I'm
Yeah.
very glad that that kind of came across.
Well, speaking of strategic, and this is a little bit different of a podcast because I had to prep my questions, I had to do my homework. So, silence can mean many things: protection, fear, complicity, survival. When you when you specifically had silence in the title, what were you trying to convey?
Mm. I think obviously readers will see that this works on like several levels, which is just something that I want from my titles. I really did a fight for that title, by the way. I had a different title that we went out on submission with. And if people aren't familiar, going out on submission is when your literary agent takes the project to editors. And that's kind of a different strategy than trying to market to the world, right? Like what I want
Mm-hmm.
an editor to think when they see my title in their email is different than what I want a reader to think. So me and my literary agent came up with a title that was like, let's make this clear that this is a thriller, but that it's a little like what you would call upmarket, like it's leaning a little bit in the literary direction. It's not like 100% commercial in its execution. And so we had a title. What was it? Oh, okay. It was In My Dreams I Watch Her Die. High drama. And my editor loved that title. And I was like, no, that was my submission title. I had another idea for this title. And I was like, look, I just feel like In My Dreams I Watch Her Die it's a little long, and I can't really say die on TikTok again and again because it gets censored. And I'm like, I don't feel like this is the best title for us. And my editor, who's amazing, Dan, he was like, okay, well, send me a list. And I did. And he's like, what on this list do you like? And I was like, I love You Watched in Silence. For this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And he was like, done, fine. It's You Watched in Silence. He's great. He really like listens when I have an opinion on titles or the cover or whatever. But You Watched in Silence, I really felt like for family blogging, that's what we do. We have things that we witness when people are putting their kids online, and we're very often watching quietly. And it's what I noticed years ago. I've been very anti-family blogging. So I was watching 5, 10 years ago and thinking, things about these videos don't sit right with me. And it's sometimes subtle and it's sometimes not. It sometimes feels like obvious negligence, especially, when you think about like Ruby Frankie and her entire case. Like there were very obvious things she was doing, like taking away her kid's
Yeah.
bed. Like that's
Yes.
not normal parenting. That's neglect. And yet you scroll through those comments and it's virtually all support at the time. Things have shifted since then.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time it was virtually all support. And I'm like, this is what we do. We just kind of quietly watch children being neglected, or even in cases that are not so extreme as that, we're seeing them being exploited, and we're very quiet about it. But again, I think when you read the book, this works on several levels. I think I've seen reviewers say, every character in this book in some way was silently watching something happen, silently being watched. And so it was just the title that I was like, in every aspect of this book, you could pull this title out and feel like, yes, it really resonates.
Yeah, because that was how I took it. It's just like every character, especially around Bella, is walking on eggshells, and it's like they're almost afraid to say the thing because then the carpet is pulled, like the rug is pulled from under them, and this fabricated lie that they're trying to support falls apart. So I thought, like, when I read it, that, and after, that was my thought of like everyone is kind of just reserved and silent and watching, just afraid to make that first initial ripple. But yeah, it does make sense too, because as those vlogs are being put out, people are watching behind the screen and we're quiet observers. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to layer it into the book throughout those characters, but I ultimately wanted people to consider the parasocial relationships that they had with creators. Both family vloggers, obviously it's centered around family vlogging, but I think there's some toxicity in idealizing anyone on social media. And that
Agreed.
parasocial aspect was just as important to me as like family vlogging is bad. Like, no, there's something inherently wrong with taking exactly what somebody puts on as an influencer and just assuming that that's life and it's not. And I feel like entitled to say that and make that point as somebody with a following of 250,000 people. I think I have kind of a unique perspective as somebody who is on the other side of those parasocial relationships and just feels
Mm-hmm.
like, I think I said this in an interview at one point, but we used to see parasocial relationships be entirely one-sided. Like pre-internet, you were obsessed with a celebrity, that was just you to them. And now we have a situation where people are creating parasocial relationships, whether that's on purpose or on accident, and they're not correcting it, and they're oversharing, and they're telling their fans, like, you're my best friends, I love you, things that are just explicitly not true. um, and so I wanted to explore that aspect too. And I just feel like as an influencer, what I was woken up to is like, sure, I can't 100% control people's parasocial relationships with me, but I can manage it significantly. And I think I have, because I don't think I get like overly celebrated in my comments. I don't think that I'd notice as much like worship from fans as the influencers who are out here saying like, I love you guys, you're my people, I'm so glad you're here, blah, blah, blah. I just think that we can control people's relationship with us a little more than we want to with it.
Agreed, and I think there's also that feeling of like if it's too good to be true, there's got to be something going on too, And there's what I love about the Bookstagram community and why I started this podcast is because I think there's genuinely great people that talk about books and share this love of books, but at the same time, like, it's you never get the full picture, and it's always these curated photos and videos that are edited by staff, potentially like Bella. And yeah, I thought it was just very timely, like just I thought it was just extremely well done, and how topical and how real of a threat it is. It is legitimately dangerous. It's not just annoying or toxic, air quote, like it could be a legitimate danger. And I thought that was a phenomenal part of the story as well.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that come out more as, kids who were fans to like YouTubers when YouTube was quite large for the vlogging era, coming out and saying that, oh, my experience in this fandom was actually really damaging to my mental health. I was ostracized. I My mental health did take a nosedive because I created identity around this fandom. I felt loved in this fandom when that was not well managed. And let's be honest, like a lot of these kind of like group chat fandoms are not well managed. I was hurt. People were hurt, and I don't think we should gloss over that.
And so, speaking of hurt, when Caitlin is introduced in the story, she's reeling from grief. So I was kind of wondering, in your writing process, you show her internal emotional arc, but you also talk about like the external mystery as everything unfolds. So how did you kind of keep yourself in balance, making sure we got both sides?
Hmm, that's a great question. I feel like I just really wanted to tap into that like 20-year-old melodrama that I think a lot of us experience. Like, I really wanted to tap into, like, I wouldn't say who was I at that age, because Caitlin is hardly like an exact self insert, although I think I'm self inserting myself into every character to some degree. But how would I have seen this experience? How would I have seen the world when you're 20 and everything feels like the end of the world already? How do you respond when your world really has ended? And I really just I couldn't see the action happening without her grief on the side. I just think that when I'm writing, I do tend to see my characters as like very alive, very much real people, and I'm such an obsessive writer. Like when I'm writing a book, that's all I'm doing. Like I'm just thinking about the characters, I'm dreaming in the characters, I'm having conversations when I'm not writing as if I was the character. So to me, she was super alive. And so as she was experiencing these things, I'm like, she would never be divorced from what was going on in her world mentally. And she's very melodramatic. I know some people feel differently about this. Some readers are like, there's too much metaphor, there's too many similes, and some people are like, oh, it's so poetic, I love it. But I'm like, that's her. She's dramatic. She's at an age where her pain is vivid, and I don't think that she can keep herself from seeing the world in this very overwrought way. Um, and so yeah, it just was always kind of natural that like, okay, this thing is happening, but her inner world is happening at the same time. It never felt hard for me to kind of weave that in.
And so for another character, Adam, there's a lot of tension around him about like class and proximity to power. So he's close to fame, but he's never fully inside it. Like, was that an active choice for you to kind of give Caitlin this? Well, this is a guy on the inside, and he's not even as inside as I thought he would be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I really did take a lot of inspiration from the real world, and I'm honest about this. Obviously, I didn't steal anybody's life or any specific family vlog or anything, but you notice patterns in these influencers and how they run their accounts, and like there's always a circle. There's always people that are not just their friends, they're working for them, which is such a like fraught dynamic, but it's consistent with most influencers. Like it's crazy how many of them, the people that are editing their videos are their besties. And it's just like, well, now you've created a very weird situation where you're like, you're my friend and I love you, but you're my employee. So how could you
Yes.
ever leave? How could you ever call me out? How could you ever say anything? Like, if this job falls apart, everything falls apart. So you're never really going to have friendship that way. And it's almost like another layer of this, like, parasocial dynamic, right? Like, it's not parasocial because they are actually friends, but are you, like, actually friends in that kind of power dynamic?
Right. It's like teetering between friendship and cult, like the cult of Bella. Like it teeters, and I think that's why Adam expresses frustration too, because even he has a hard time like understanding where the boundaries are, but it's to Bella's benefit to be like friend, employee.
Exactly. And I think that it's purposeful. And I think that these influencers pull from their friendships, pull from their fandom to have people work for them because of that power imbalance, because they're going to have that control. It just happens too much for me to think that it's an accident. So I did
No.
want to highlight that.
So, what was the hardest scene to write? Because so much goes on in this book. Like, which one were you just heartbroken over?
You know, hardest to write and heartbroken are different. So which one do you want?
Can I have both?
Yeah, you can have both. So normally I would say like nothing is hard to write, just by virtue of how obsessive I am and how like I just get 100% absorbed in every chapter. I'm not one of those writers generally who's like ooh, I've hit a wall. Like, I just write it so fast that I don't give myself time to hit a wall. I'm like writing a book in 2 months usually. And so, uh, normally nothing, but this book does have one that's really hard to write for me because I had actually in the middle of the book, I had an incident where my brain was just like not functioning all of a sudden. I like could barely read an email. I was exhausted all the time. And then I was sitting down with my partner at the time to play Monopoly because he was like, well, let's like distract you from it. And I rolled the dice and realized I couldn't count them in my head. And I was like, oh, something's wrong. I'm like counting dice on my fingers. And I just felt the weirdest I've ever felt. And I called my doctor and I was like, run every test for what could be causing such extreme fatigue that like I can't think. And I'm very sharp, not to be conceited, but I'm just somebody who like, even when I'm right before bed, nodding off, I'm thinking very, very clearly. I don't like taking Benadryl or anything that's going to make me drowsy because it just makes me anxious. It's just not the way my brain works. It's usually very clear. So I'm like, something's horribly wrong. Turns out I had a B12 deficiency, which thankfully is obviously nothing serious and it's very correctable, but very dangerous if you let it get too low. Like, absolutely, you could go into psychosis, dangerous. Your brain really does stop functioning. And I could feel that at the time. I was very much like, one, experiencing all this brain fog, but as I was waiting for test results to come back and waiting to get my injections, every day I felt myself being less myself. And like I trusted me less. It's so hard to explain, but I was just like, yeah, I don't feel right, and I don't know what I'm gonna wake up and feel tomorrow, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I was coming from a very happy place, so it was strange. But because of that experience, I was like, I want to write this like terrifying experience into the book, and that's where we get that fever chapter. I was like, I'm so in tune with what it feels like to like have this fog and to be like, what's real in my head, what's not real. And so writing that was really uncomfortable because I had just gone through it. I felt very anxious about even remembering it. So to have her have these like sorted thoughts, this like I'm here and I'm not here, and like I get it and I don't get it, that was really anxiety inducing. So that's the only chapter I was like, this is rougher than I thought. I don't even.
Well, I mean, that's totally fair. It's the fever dream as you wrote the fever dream.
Yeah, so that one was rough. But heartbreaking was definitely that penultimate chapter. Obviously not the entire chapter, but readers will know what I'm talking about. But that conversation, I mean, even when I went back to edit it, I was crying. I just felt like I could feel every like ounce of her grief, and to the extreme extent that she felt it. So that was the only chapter I think I ever cried, but I cried a ton.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not usually a big crier, but that was definitely one of those, like, I kind of slightly lowered the book and I just stared at the wall without, like, saying anything, just, like, mentally on a different plane, and, like, someone could probably be talking to me and I would have no recollection of what they were saying because I was just sent into another universe.
Yeah.
Well, and then, so, this has been on my brain, and, like, for the other things I can kind of see, but Hannah is often referred to as like a viper or like snake-ish, and it happens quite often. And I was wondering what you're trying to portray with that.
So I think that Hannah's a very authentic person, and so I think, when we think snake, we do think like, stab you in the back kind of situation, and I didn't want to portray that because I don't think she is that, other than I do think Caitlin has a really hard time trusting, and so that I think part of it is her perspective of this person can always hurt me, and I think that she just sees the world that way in any situation. So it doesn't matter that Hannah is very authentic, doesn't matter that she is very nice. I think that this like sense of like she's venomous because I love her. It's not that her personality is hurtful, it's that love is hurtful. She can always poison me. because I just care too much. And so it's just part of the way that she's consumed by love and the way that she sees love as like inherently attached to pain. But I also kind of loved that explanation for her as like beautiful in a dangerous way, because I don't like characters to be super one-sided, or one-dimensional. And to me, like creating this character who was just moral and she was just good and she didn't have anything else to her, this like marshmallow character, I didn't want that for Hannah. I wanted to show that like she could play the game, and she can. I mean, she's working for somebody that she hates. And Kaylin's constantly taking in, oh, like I see this little lie that she's able to tell so easily. So I wanted her to have this like authenticity, but who can't play the game? You know what I mean? There's nobody who's so good that they're not playing the game. So I just wanted to like pull a little bit more from her, that like she's a great character, she's lovely, she's honest, she's authentic, but she's got a little bite to her, you know?
Yeah, because at first I was like, oh no, what is she gonna do? And not that she's perfect or innocent and all this, but I was kind of reflecting like, oh, like I think Caitlin's worried she's poisonous. And then as I was reading on, I was like, it really shows how horrible this social situation is when the most authentic person is labeled like poisonous, like a threat. Like that is how you know like how dire the situation is, because as I'm reading, I'm like, Hannah, see, like she calls a spade a spade. Like, no, I'm not happy about this, but I opted into it. And so I I was like, oh, I think she's trying to warn I think Lee's trying to warn us that something is going to happen here, and it did, just not in the way we were all anticipating.
And I love, and I did leave it for that reason, and I'm sure everyone in the book will, every reader will see that, like, I give something for every character. I want to make sure there's reason to doubt any character. I do want people to be like, is this the one? Is this the problem? Is this the... So every character needed to have their own level of shade, too.
Yeah.
And I do think that everyone does. But yeah, I did want to leave this feeling of like Hannah is the one that is seeing this most clearly. But yeah, you're right. It's like is authenticity feeling a little toxic?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I immediately thought like, oh my gosh, this would be a great like movie or TV show. And so if it was to be optioned, what things would you be very like adamant like, no, this needs to remain the same?
Obviously, the ending has to be the ending. I mean, I wrote everything for the ending, so while I will be vague, it has to play out just like that moment. And I could see it playing out in film or TV so well. It's hard to be vague, but I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. It would
Yeah.
play so well on screen
Yes.
in a very different way than it does in writing. So I would love to see that play out. Um, but that's such a good question. You really don't have that much say when they make it into a movie, so I don't
Yeah.
be able to tell them. But I really would want to keep the authenticity of all of these characters. Definitely, like the race cannot be changed. I feel very strongly about the race of every character, including my white characters, because I just think, well, I don't want to give away who's who and what's what, but I think that the race of everyone was in some way important to the story and to points I was trying to make. If not important to family vlogging, just important to what I've seen in influencer culture in general. I've always thought it so telling that, like, almost every influencer who has ever gotten big, every white influencer, at some point has some tweet pulled back that is, like, inherently racist. And I'm like, what? How are you guys living your life? Because you could go through my social media back to middle school, and I would never say I have never said a slur. I have never said anything racist. Why is it happening to you guys so often? That's systemic. That's a systemic problem. Not just with influencer culture, with white people, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah, and I think too, as I was growing up, it's very, I came from a
Frozen for me.
And I think, kind of furthering the point of how books give us perspective, growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends, like, period. Books were my friends. And so, I learned a lot about different cultures that I didn't interact with personally through books. Um, you know, Sexual orientation, gender, race, culture, traditions, and like things that people cherish. Those traditions, I learned predominantly through books, and so that's why I also think that would be a special thing to keep and You Watched in Silence, because it kind of talks about how like being complicit in acts, it can be anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. So I think that would be extremely thoughtful of them to do if it was optioned as well, because I think that's important.
Yeah, I would be so upset if they changed the race or the orientation. I mean, if they made it not sapphic, you're not even going to make the movie.
Right. I mean, like, because this cover is gorgeous, by the way, because like with thrillers, it's usually just, half a woman's face or like someone standing in a doorway, and it's like this really it visually portrays like accountability, like you watched what happened to me in silence. And so what at the end of the book, I even got a new appreciation for the cover because it's just so striking, it's beautiful, and it's so meaningful.
Oh, thank you. The cover is so incredibly important to me. I had such strong feelings about the cover for this book. I mean, ugh, my poor cover designer, I was like specific. I was like, I know what I want because of what you just said, because thriller covers have a look always. And I'm like, I don't want to be car in the woods, house in the woods, half a woman's face. I'm like, I don't want it. I don't know why thrillers have stayed the same kind of cover for like decades now. I'm like, look, I want something that is beautiful, that is like feminine. I feel like there's so much feminine energy in this book. I wanted to convey like this is a female driven book. Obviously, like Bella Green herself is so like glamorous and beautiful. I'm like, why do we not tap into that? And so I everything down to the holographic foil. I was like, look,
Yes.
can we foil the eyes? Can we foil the text? I I'm so grateful to my publisher Blackstone because they're so like agreeable to me and my ideas. Like this is more expensive to do to put a foil on the
Oh,
cover
I
like
bet.
this. And so I was really nervous to ask and nervous that they weren't going to say yes, but they were excited about the idea.
Yeah, and I think too, because like, if you tell people like, oh, I read thrillers, they're like, oh, what detective series? Or like, oh, what lawyer series? Or oh, what doctor series? And this has this, like, no, it's a sapphic tale that, you know, I, I think it just lets you know from the cover, like, this is not your ordinary thriller. Like, just
Yeah.
sitting on the shelf, it captures your attention, especially for like people that have read thrillers for a long time like me. It's like, oh, this is different. And that's why like I did reach out for the advanced reading copy, because I was like, this is different. Like this is eye catching. And then it's like, wow. And then it just became like my favorite read of last year.
Oh my
So
gosh, I'm so honored. Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to convey that. I think it is different. Obviously, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's not fully commercial. You're not getting like everything that you necessarily would expect in a domestic thriller, especially because it's blending, thriller and horror. So I just wanted to convey that, like, yes, this is creepy. Yes, we're in that space. We're in this darker space, but it's very beautiful. It's very feminine. It's very female.
yes, and I have like a shelf that I actually don't keep a lot of books, like I'll donate or like lend out, but I have a shelf that's like my forever like shelf. And like, oh, when I got the physical copy, I was like, I cannot wait for it to go up there. She looks
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you so much. Yeah, I so adore that cover. I have zero complaints about it. I was so nervous before, by the way, because you cannot see foil in like a digital pull up. You can't. So like that's why I just chose to make the eyes black and to make the text. But
I was like, what if I'm wrong? Like, what if this holographic foil is going to clash with the rest of it? What if it's going to look really tacky and weird? Like, I could be very wrong and I could have ruined my own cover because this was my idea. And so the day that that cover came and I saw it the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, no, this is perfect. I could not have been more thrilled with it. I know some authors, not that they will say this, and like they obviously shouldn't, don't love their covers, but gosh, I love mine so much.
Good. I'm glad because I really meant it when I said like this was the best date because like, the cover is striking, it catches your attention. The plot is entertaining, especially for a thriller. Like you are kept guessing, but then there's that eventual twist where it's like not even the one you were looking for that strikes you. And it's such a I like my thriller and horror based in reality, and so that just like really topped it off for me because it is such a great topic, and I think it's one that unfortunately we're gonna see get worse before it gets better. Although I will say, on my behalf, YouTube will make me confirm each time now if there is a child in my video. So I'm seeing steps in the right direction, but I do hope that it gets better.
We have a long way to go, but
Yeah.
when I first started noticing the ethical issues with family vlogging, I mean, no one cared. Nobody cared. It wasn't even like a question about whether this was ethical. Everyone just was like, okay, yeah, you can film your kids, you can put them online. Who cares? And I just think that's like a cultural issue actually that we have with children and autonomy in the sense that like we just assume they have none. We just assume kids are kids, they don't care. Like parents get to decide what happens to your life. Which I don't agree with. Like morally, I don't agree with it as like a parenting stance. I think if you have kids, you made individual little people with their own desires and with their own wants and needs, and who are one day going to be adults who have to contend with the fact that all this is online. And so I think there are just kind of neglect to see children as people, like, has caused this to spiral in the way that it has. And I do think it's going to take time to roll it back.
Well, and I think that's part of the genius of having Caitlin as such a young but adult character because, as we're raised, of course, our parents, if we're lucky enough to have parents that care for us, they're going to try and steer us in the quote right direction. And it's always with positive intent. No one is perfect, but they're going to try and steer us in what we should think, how we should feel. And I think there's a moment in anyone's life where you kind of have to stand on your own 2 feet and be like, no, this is what I believe, this is my conviction. And I feel like Caitlin is at that point in her life too as the book unfolds. So, I think there's a lot of realization going on um, in this
Absolutely.
book.
Yeah, and the fact that, the fandom, or she became a fan to Bella as a child. And so there is that like slow dawning of like, oh, okay, is this actually something we should be doing to kids and with kids?
To kind of close this off, I was wondering if someone was like, oh, obviously keeping Lee's next releases on my TBR immediately and pre ordering, but what are some of your favorite books that you feel like kind of match your vibe if people are like, I want to read more things that like Lee would suggest?
This is such a good question, and I'm like hesitating because all the books I read, I don't know if they're exactly my vibe. But like I just love them for their own things. Like I love Becca Grishow, who's like a also a ghostwriter turned author, and she writes sapphic romances. And so she's got For the Bride coming out this summer that I am so stoked about. But obviously that's not my vibe, but I recommend it. But also, I think C.G. Drews is phenomenal as an author and as a person. They're just so supportive of all authors in the horror genre. Like I love authors like that that just will lift you up. They have posted my book in their, they do those like collection posts. I don't know if you've seen, but always it gets such a great reaction. So I adore them, but I feel like they've kind of got that like overwrought thing going, that very like gothic, like I think that our style of writing is like not terribly different. I wouldn't like I struggle to say anyone's style is like anyone else's, but I think if
Hmm.
you like that like just very gothic, very descriptive kind of writing style, C.G. Drew's you will super love. Um and then like all the authors who blurbed my book too, like
Hmm.
you'll find something in those stories, but I feel like they're all so different. Like AJ Finn obviously blurbed it. Kate Ellis Marshall, I can see a lot of similarities in our work. Robin Harding, I think just any thriller that's kind of got that like thoughtful social commentary, which is becoming more and more common, like Tradwife. I think you could see a lot of that in my work too. So you probably will enjoy any of the authors that blurbed me.
Oh, yeah, and I was actually speaking to another reader, another bookstagram friend of mine on my previous podcast, and she brought up You Watched in Silence because she read it too. Um, and she reads more romances than I do, but she said like what she particularly loved about your book is it's so atmospheric. Like you it's action based and there's things happening in conflict of course, but like when you're out in the fog at the sand and like you are literally there. So she was like, I love me a good atmospheric book, like, bunch of prose and stuff like that. So that was like a huge selling point for her. Like you're literally there as you read. You watched in silence.
Oh,
Um
that's so sweet. Yeah, I think like CG Drews, like I said, they're so great for that. Like those, the setting is its own character for sure. Um, I mean, like, Don't Let the Forest In is literally called Don't Let the Forest In. Like, it's got to be its own character. Not to overshare about the plot of that book, but um, definitely, I think we're getting a lot of great books in Gothic literature right now that are doing exactly that. That you could say that the setting feels as much as a character as the actual characters, and I'm super excited that people, I did not think that that's what was going to resonate with people because I don't consider that my strong suit as a writer, actually. I have aphantasia, so I don't even see images in
I
my
do
head.
too. I do too.
Yeah. Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's so I don't like I can't pull up an image and like write it down. And so I tend to lean into I guess maybe this helps in the atmosphere actually is what I've learned since like it came out and since so many people were talking about it is that I don't just describe how things look. I'm like the fog is like hitting your face and the sand is like Play-Doh. Like to me when I pull back a memory those other senses come up for me way more than the image. And so it
Hmm.
might be working to my advantage in a way I didn't expect, but I didn't think that that's what people were going to identify with. And most readers do comment on that. But I'm so excited because, like, I hope to, in a future book, return to Salmon Island. And so if people really loved that setting, I would be thrilled. Not saying it's gonna happen because it depends on a lot more than me. It depends on a publisher actually buying the book, but that is my plan for my third book. So we'll see how it
Oh
goes.
my gosh, I would absolutely just fall under this desk on my floor if we go back because I just even for me because I don't visualize either. I'm kind of focused more on like okay, what's happening? There's a puzzle. Let's figure it out. What's going on? And so I think that is to the credit of You Watched in Silence that like people from multiple backgrounds enjoy it for different reasons cuz like it all it's all in one. Like there's something for everyone in this book, and I think that's why it becomes so magical. And also, like I know for some horror, like especially like feminine rage is big right now, and horror is becoming more popular, which I love. But sometimes, the messaging is a little niche. But like for You Watched in Silence, I feel like this is a message that like if you're not behind this, there's something wrong with you. Like if you don't support making sure this doesn't happen to people, like red flag, huge red flag.
That's honestly a huge reason I wrote this. Because, like I said, I wrote Nothing Even Happened first, and Nothing Even Happened is super, super feminist. It's very much a female rage story, as is You Watch in Silence. I refer to it as female rage story all the time because I think I've got that in there. But I could see Nothing Even Happened being a little more controversial in its message. I could
Mhm.
see people being like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I think You Watched in Silence is one of those stories that I was like, look, who on any side of the political aisle is going to have a problem with protecting kids? I think that we should all feel exactly the same about that. Like you said, you have a problem if you don't. And so I was like, you know what? I am going to write something that is so accessible, that says something I want to say about the world, but is very accessible and that probably I honestly don't think a lot of people realize. I know plenty of people do, of course, but there's so many people that just don't understand the extent to what
Mhm.
these family bloggers are doing and to the purpose that they're doing it. It's not naivete, you know what I mean? They know exactly what's happening. They can see their analytics, and I just really wanted to make sure that people understood the extent of it and um, that it goes beyond just the cases like Ruby Frankie. That was obviously wrong because it was such overt abuse. And I do recommend, as we're recommending books, I do recommend Sherry Frankie's book on her experiences growing up in that household. I believe it hit the
Mhm.
New York Times bestseller list. It's fantastic. But I really wanted to show that, like, you don't have to be this horrible, abusive parent for this to be super problematic. Like, this happens in happy households too. I can't imagine how I would feel because I'm such a private person. Even with my big platform, I hold my personal life very close to my chest. And so, if I had grown up in that environment, even if everything had gone well, if all my life had been shared that way, I don't know how I'd function as an adult. Like I'm just too private for the world to have this in their hands. And that's something that should have be my choice. It shouldn't belong to anyone else. And I just really wanted to make sure that we could all agree on that point, and I think we all do. If we think about it, I think we all really do.
Well, and also, it's not just, you don't just explain the extent of the damage, but you also explain, like, the benefit, like, why Bella has convinced herself that this is the best thing for her family. And that what she explains, it makes sense on the surface. Like, why wouldn't you want to give your children the most opportunity as possible? Why wouldn't you do these things if you had it? Wouldn't you? Like, how dare you sit on your high horse?
Yeah.
um
And
so
I
I think.
really Oh, sorry. I just was gonna say I really, like I said, I don't like one-dimensional characters, and I don't think that even the worst of the family bloggers are out here being like, I want to torment my kids, I want to hurt my
No.
kids, I want to make their life harder. This is people doing a lot of rationalizing at the end of the day. And so that was important to me too, that like Bella does rationalize it, and you know what? It does make sense. She can talk her way through it, and it doesn't sound that bad on the surface. You do have to kind of dig in to what this really means to decide that, like, okay, yeah, this is a huge issue.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And I know, like, obviously, I'm so excited for all that's to come. Even if we don't go back. Even if we don't go back and You Watched in Silence is the only is that's fine. She's a perfect baby. I love her forever. Um, but no, I really do think that this had like such a phenomenal message.
Thank
And
you.
I, I I understand like your desire for this story to be told because it absolutely is relevant and there needs to be more conversations about this to protect our children. I think it's especially relevant in today's political climate too, like now more than ever. I mean, obviously we had no idea and we still don't have a clear idea, but especially with the Epstein files coming out, like when you thought of this years and years ago, it's not like you had a crystal ball and saw this coming, but I just hope people can use this as a tool to kind of bridge that, these little transgressions add up.
Yeah, yeah. This is cultural. I heard some. woman on an interview. I wish I remembered where. And what she said resonated with me so many years ago, and it's just never left my head. But she said that we live in a, I don't know if I should say this so, but we live in a pedophilic culture. And when she said that, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you talking about? And then she continued to explain that, like, we believe that women aging is inherently unattractive. We think lines on a woman's face is inherently unattractive. Everything that we see as attractive is heavily related to youth and very young youth because, I mean, you start getting lines and wrinkles mid 20s, late 20s. So we see very young women as like the epitome of beautiful. And as soon as she explained it, I never got that out of my head. And I think that culture is, we're seeing now just how much it's permeated, just how much it's happening on a level that we struggle to even comprehend.
Yeah,
And
I
I
agree.
would, I just think, like you said, I did not have a crystal ball, even like down to the year. I mean, I wrote this, what was it? It would have been 2023. And so I had a deal for it, like, you know, summer 2023. And so even with like the Ruby Frankie case going viral, and like, I didn't know that this was all going to kind of line up at this time, but it has really lined up to where, yeah, it's so intensely relevant. I thought I was going to be shining a light on it, and I think a light has been shown, but still, I think that there's a lot of important layers in the book. And I mean, I've had readers say that they really had never thought about it, that they really did not know the extent to it. And I've said in so much of my promotional material that, like, nothing I wrote into the book has not happened to some degree. It may not be exactly one influencer's story, but every single aspect of this has some relevancy to some family vlogger. And so it is very real.
It is. It is. And I think, our generation is one. I was explaining this to my husband, like, growing up, the new America's Next Top Model documentaries out and all of these things, and realizing that, like, your entire childhood for a generation has been trying to shape you into a sexual object for pleasure of other people. And I think for our generation, like, there's some grief that comes with that. We have to mourn the childhood that we had. And yes, there were moments of joy, of course, but I think there is a sadness that we have to process that unfortunately it was manipulated, and the people that should be protecting us, there was a cataclysmic failure. And so I've been dealing with that personally, and I've been dealing with that even before I reached out to you about coming tonight. So I just think, unfortunately, the stars have aligned to expose this issue of protecting our children, but at the same time, it's more important than ever realizing how systemic it is from, individual greed, family unit, society as a whole, government structured. Like, there's just so many layers to this. This is absolutely one that's happening in real life, whether it hits the newsstands or not. And yeah, it's one of those books that, like, you're gonna ask me in 5 years what happened, and I'm gonna remember everything about it. This is not a
Oh,
forgettable book by any means.
thank you. Yeah, I do think there is a lot of grief a lot of people are experiencing right now in regards to this. And, we're really just scratching the surface on what we're naming. I mean, we could go to the Nickelodeon documentary if you want to talk about our childhood and the way that those kids were exploited and in a very public way and ignored when they chose to speak out about it. I mean, I read Jeanette McCurdy's memoir. That very much resonated with me and her experiences on set of Nickelodeon. But I think almost every woman, I would say our age, but I think always and younger generations as well, unfortunately, I know multiple women who would say I got hit on more as a teenager than I ever did as an adult. And I mean, that really resonates with me. I don't think that I was ever, I would go running as a kid and I wore basketball shorts and a t-shirt to run. I dressed like pretty modestly and I would get honked at and catcalled. I had adult men approach me who I explicitly said, like, I'm 14. And they continue to ask for my number. That was not rare or uncommon. And so there is this sense of, like, just a deep unfairness of it all. And the way that victims, one something that like really hits me about the Epstein files is like they're reading them now is obviously horrific in its own right, and I don't blame anyone for being horrified, but I do have to ask myself why so many people are shocked when
Mm-hmm.
thousands said this was happening. And I think I posted this on social media somewhere, but I just don't know. Like there's something so deeply, I don't even have a word for it, just deeply depressing that 1,000 women's voices still does not outcompete the denial of one
Mm-hmm.
man.
Mm-hmm.
It just still doesn't. We need concrete proof. We know that this is pervasive. We know that this is systemic, and yet we still just don't believe it. And I guarantee you, there will even be people who read You Watch in Silence and then are like, well, but it's not happening here or here. And, well, this influencer, they definitely don't know that their kid is being watched in a way that is specifically exploitative. And I guarantee you they do. As somebody who can read my analytics, who can see exactly when people are watching, when they're clicking on, when they're clicking off, they do know. You could even see for a while, I don't know if you still can, but you could see for a while that like when the most paused part of a video was
Mm-hmm.
publicly, um, and you go to these family like I would challenge anybody to go to these family vlogging videos and see what the most paused image is, and I guarantee you it is not going to sit right with you. I did a guest essay on crime reads about family vlogging, and I talk about this there. But several years ago, YouTube actually cracked down on dance videos and gymnastics videos of family vloggers because predators were leaving comments that were like timestamps and like code words like swimsuit or yeah, it was very explicit, and advertisers were getting upset because they're like, we don't want our ads being placed on videos where predators are clearly watching kids. So they made it so that these like dance and gymnastic videos couldn't be monetized. And you would expect, if these people really didn't know that this was happening, that family vloggers' reaction to this would be like, oh my God, I didn't know. I'm so horrified. We won't be posting that kind of content anymore. I don't know a single family blogger that reacted that way. But I know a lot who were posting on Twitter and Facebook that they wanted monetization back, that they wanted comments back, that YouTube was punishing the victim. Like, how could you ever say that? Like, punishing the victim or you? Is the victim getting paid or are you getting paid? And why is like money going to your head? I saw one influencer who specifically said, well, now you've just made it easier for the predators to watch because they don't have to watch an ad. What are you talking about? And like, what a specific way to exploit the way that like the average viewer does not understand how social media works, because they're going to be like, well, I guess that you still can watch this content, but if you take a more macro view, if there are not ads on this content, it's not getting posted. And if you are just posting gymnastic videos for the joy of it, then why do you care that they're not monetized? Like, no, if you can't put ads on it, it will stop being shown. And so, and they know this, they know this is how it works, but they would rather have ads on gymnastics and dance content than to just walk away from that kind of content knowing that predators are watching. I'm sorry, that is so sick. That is so twisted. And that was years ago. That had to be like 2017, 2018. I say it in the essay. I know I looked it up exactly when it happened, but we just glossed right over it. Like, this is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying. Like, family
We
vloggers have just
always do.
gotten, yeah, they've just gotten such a huge pass in a way that I don't understand. Um, but I am thrilled to have you watch in silence and to make my point about it. And I hope that it permeates our culture a little bit in some small way.
Yeah, because I think the grief is very real, but I think it's natural and healthy to grieve and feel those, sad, angry emotions. But at some point, we kind of, at least I do to cope, it's like, how do we channel this in a productive manner? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And obviously, like at a systematic level, we can try facing the dragon head on, but also like in our communities with the people that we know and our families, like what steps are we doing? And I think that as more people talk about You Watched in Silence, it helps them have a
Yeah.
conversation. I was talking with one of my other Bookstagram friends on a previous podcast about how a series, Books of Tom, it helps people talk about trauma, because like it's hard to just go up to a group of people and be like, I have a heroin addiction and I need help. But if
Yeah.
you're like, hey, did you enjoy this book? Like, yeah, I struggle. Like, it gives them a more palatable way to kind of have that conversation. And I think this is especially relevant for what we're dealing with every day right now. Every day when I wake up and I see just even more stuff coming out of those files. Like, I feel like if you're doing a book club, if you are championing on your Bookstagram, Book Talk, BookTube right now about how horrible the Epstein files are and how things need to change, like, your pick needs to be You Watched in Silence. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, and not to, I don't want to use this moment to like pitch my next book, but I do think it's relevant that that book is also very much focused on the victimization of young women. And this is obviously just an issue that is near and dear to my heart. And so I hope that that book will help give people an outlet for that kind of trauma as well. But I also just hope it'll give people like some, at least one very actionable step, which is I personally like I just will not engage with this kind of content. And if it's not engaged with, if it's not making money, it's not going to continue to exist. And as much as it may appeal to a predatory audience, the fact is that a lot of like innocent people are watching this content not knowing. I don't think that they would choose to be a part of it. I think that they generally genuinely do create a real parasocial relationship with these kids that is born out of actual affection and not wanting to see them harmed. And so I just hope that for a lot of people this will be like, okay, I can't engage with this anymore.
yeah. And I think even F. Scott Fitzgerald with Daisy, like hoping her daughter was just a fool, because this has just been something we've been struggling with for a long time. But we just focus on trying
Yeah.
to do our part. It doesn't seem like a lot to stop watching those videos that you might watch every Tuesday and Thursday, but if enough people do, it adds up.
Yeah. It really does. I mean, we've seen influencers' careers just disappear overnight by holding them accountable. So it's very doable, and I would love to see it happen. I mean, I would love to see laws passed. I would love to see more laws passed. But that's going to take a long time, like we said. And so in the meantime, like we control this. We are the audience 100%. And beyond that, beyond family vlogging, like I said, I just think that I hope it makes people think about their parasocial dynamics with people. You never ever know somebody on the other side of the screen. And I say that as somebody who's on the other side of the screen with
Yeah.
a very large following. You don't know me. And I think I write this even in the acknowledgments of the book that like I respect my readers and I respect my viewers. I don't love you. I don't know you. I'm not capable of that. We're never going to have that kind of relationship. And I also do not want you to worship me. I would really appreciate it if you would hold me accountable like you would anyone else. I would appreciate it if you don't see me above anyone else and you acknowledge that like we just don't know each other. And I know we don't
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes my comments are so off of my personality. Like I posted like that, I don't know if you saw, but like a silly video of a guy who had like called me ugly and I was like kind of scathing to him in response. And so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you had it in you. Like you're so sweet, you're so kind." And I'm like, "Oh no, honey, that's my defaults. You don't know me, babe. No one would ever be like, oh, Lee, she's so soft. She's so sweet. Like, no, Lee is a direct, assertive, blunt. She will always call you out. Like, she's the one who, if there's an elephant in the room, she's going to bring a whole herd of elephants. Like, we're going to talk about it. So it just, even not trying to portray a certain personality, it just like people pick and pull things that like have nothing to do with you. I am not a soft, gentle personality in any way. I hope my book shows that. And I've even had viewers be like, "Oh, I'm gonna look at you a little differently because I thought I had some idea of you, and this book shows me that you're you're a little different than I thought." And so you just truly never know a person.
Right, and I think it's the fact of like, because it is what it is with me. Like, you may generalize from like my 50-second reels or whatever in my podcast, but like, you know, I think it's when people are like, "Oh, no, my follower count," or like, "Oh, no, come back." That's a red flag of like, okay, this is someone that's actively putting on an image, because if you're really just being your authentic self, it doesn't matter. It does
Yeah.
not matter. Um,
Yeah. And I think we're seeing that now that like things are getting so polarizing politically and people are working so hard to hide their views. I think that at least is a good sign of, is this person being at all authentic or are they not? But even if you get as much authenticity, I try to be very authentic in my beliefs and what I say, and I obviously don't hide my political opinions, not in my videos, not in my writing. However, people still will get the wrong idea. And so, like, the best thing to do is to simply not worship anybody online. Like, these are
yeah.
just people. That's it at the end of the day. Like, people you do not know.
And that's funny because you posted a Forrest Gump like kind of conversation about Jenny the character, and like I've always said like Jenny is just one of the worst characters. Like woman to woman, like I just have a really hard time with her because like, and I think you made exceptional points in your video. Like horrible things outside of her control have absolutely happened to her, and it is hard to like be uh to heal from that and not perpetuate that. But like even when I saw that, I was like, okay, like this is her personal opinion. Like I see where she's coming from. I agree with these points. But like also she just happens to be an author of a book I really love too. And so it's like these multiple dimensions that we can have totally exist.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do enjoy like your breakdowns of like movie scenes, movie characters, and that's also why I have this podcast, is because I feel like with books, people have different perspectives. And it's like, dang, I didn't even think about it that way until so and so said this.
And
So I
I get that a lot in my comments too, especially like my handmaids videos that people really love. Um, just a ton of people, one being like, oh, I had not thought of it this way beforehand, but also two being like, if you've seen, I don't know if you've watched them, but if anyone has, they know I am Nick's biggest hater.
yes.
And so, but I get people who comment and are like, I actually really love Nick, but I love your breakdowns so much. And I'm like, you know what? We do live in such like a polarizing world where people want to like every single opinion that you have, and they want to agree with every single opinion that you have. And Jenny especially gets so many angry comments. I was just
I
going
saw
through those
some of
ones.
those.
Which, to be fair, I mean, my greater point was, I think there are ways that like men make these assertions that show me a lot of the way that men think. Like the fact that so many people are like, I hate Jenny because she left Forrest. I mean, I had men in that comment section being like, well, a man who was abused as a child doesn't get to abuse his wife. And I'm like, yeah, because Jenny wasn't abusing anyone. It's just crazy to me that like men will compare like leaving a man to like a woman getting actually violently abused. So I'm like, this is like a great litmus test. It is a great litmus test for men. Like, it's what you think behind why you don't like Jenny that tells me, like, okay, can you empathize with the experience of trauma of a woman, or do you empathize only with the experience of a man being left? Um,
Yeah, because I think for me the big problem I have with Jenny is that, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Forrest Gump by now,
that's it.
I'm not apologizing. She has this child, and Forrest is a. I don't think he's shown anything that he would not be anything but a try, at least, to be a great father. And so
Right.
the problem I have is that, like, she, and I'm not even saying she willfully did it with negative intention, but, her child did not have that connection with his father for those first few years of his life. And I kind of do, I think that is something I have a hard time with, because, it's one thing for you to go through things and process, but like when children are involved, I'm like, he's lucky enough to have someone like Forrest that would love him like from the moment Forrest sees him and is like just
Yeah.
totally in love. So that's my main problem with Jenny. Um,
And I think that's the one, again, because I think that obviously it's the reasoning behind that can be or is not a red flag. And that's the one point that people make that I'm like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from on that. I also don't know where the line is. I don't know like when she tried to reach out because he was running for years. So I'm like, I do we
yeah.
even know when she wanted to reach out? Because I don't think we do. But I'm like, yeah, that kind of logic makes perfect sense to me. But the amount of men that like honestly think that she did something like absolutely like vitriolic, abused Forrest in some way. I'm just like, man, because she left him, like that's like,
No, man,
I
YouTube
don't know about
YouTube's an
that.
angry place. YouTube's
You're
an
in
angry
an
place.
angry place. Yes, completely. I and of course, like part of content is to put out these like polarizing opinions to get people talking. So like, I know what I'm doing when I say something about Jenny from Forrest Gump. I know what I'm doing. People like when I make these videos that are like male characters that are loved but should really be hated. I know that like people are going to have strong opinions, and that's like part of sparking these discussions. I think, and like part of getting into media analysis and breaking down these characters. It's just part of it. You have to put out these things that are going to offend people. Um, but yeah, I just do think that at the end of the day, like the more divorced we can be from our content creators and see them
Yes.
as people creating content and not friends we need to agree with or idealize. And again,
Yes.
that's why I like my comment section because it's generally not just people that are like sitting there complimenting me and be like, I agree with you, I agree with everything you say. I don't want that. And that's impossible. Like, I talk about so many shows and movies, and I have very strong opinions. Like, we are not going to agree. And if you like my content, anyways, and you're just here for the vibes and the discussion and you know, awesome. I would love that. But you don't need to like value me as a person. We don't know each other.
Right, and I think respectful discourse is something that we need to like it's okay for like, obviously like the big red flags of like protect children. Like, there's no room for compromise there. But for other things where it's like, okay, like, she likes Nick, this other person doesn't, like, this doesn't affect anyone in a meaningful way. So
No.
just kind of like realizing that there's certain like battles that are worth fighting and there's some that aren't, and just like respectfully disagreeing, I think is a lost art that needs to come back.
I completely agree. And anytime I see a comment like that, that's like, I actually really love Nick, but I still watch your videos. I'm like, you are God's bravest soldier for being here because Lord knows I do not go light on Nick. But I so appreciate it. I think it's so lovely and nice, and just that this idea that like you're getting something from the discussion anyway, and just being
Hmm.
able to see anything in a new light, whether you walk away agreeing or not, is so valuable. And I don't know what the point of narrative analysis would even be besides that. Like that's the center of it, right? Like we need to have these kind of discussions. It's very like book club, I think, and like, are you guys going to see all the characters the same way? No. Um, but like you said, I think that it's not that serious. There are bigger battles to fight, and I think like the greater point here is hey, like we're looking at the world through this lens, and that's what is useful, not whether or not we agree about Jenny from Forrest Gump, you know?
Right. Well, now for everyone that's like, what are they talking about? I want to see these videos, and also where do I go to make sure I am in the know about anything Lee writes in the future? Where should listeners follow you?
So you can follow me at H Lee Justine on virtually everything. I think it's usually H underscore Lee underscore Justine. But if you just search H Lee Justine or even Lee Justine, I'm going to pop up. I am on TikTok. I post to the Meta apps. I usually cross post my TikTok content. So it just depends where you want your short form content to come from. But I post on Instagram and Facebook, Threads. And I do longer video essays on YouTube, and I don't think I'm missing anything. But you can also, if you want book news, join my mailing list at hleejustine.com, and that's where you will get all of the book updates. In addition to, I obviously share on my socials as well when I've got more book news, and I'll hopefully have ARC news for Nothing Even Happens in the very near future.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna be such a great day when that hits my inbox. But yeah, so for all of you listening, I'm going to have this in the description and a neat little bow because if you are not following Lee, what are you doing with your life? If you haven't read her book, seriously, what are you doing with your life lately? Go pick it up. I don't even care where you get it from at this point. Just search, Google it. I don't care. Like, more people need to be talking about this book. It's very important. And I, once again, am just so thankful that you took the time to talk to me about this because I I do think there's some fiction books that are entertaining and there's a little bit of reality to it, but this is just it hits your heart and rattles your soul and is a very special book that more people need to be aware of.
Thank you so much. You have been a lovely host. This was a very enjoyable conversation. I did not even notice how much time had flew by. So I super appreciate it. And thanks again. You've been like such a big fan from the beginning. I don't know if anyone has been more supportive of You Watch in Silence. Like you've just posted so much about it. You don't hesitate to like leave it in comments. I'm just absolutely so appreciate it. So I didn't even hesitate when you asked me to pop up here. And the discussion didn't disappoint. I really appreciate your views on You Watch in Silence, how much you've thought about it, obviously. It means so much to me as an author to have anybody like look at this and put so much analysis into what everything meant. Like I just think that's why writing is worth doing at all. So thank you so much for reading and appreciating it.
Of course, I'm happy to do it. I'm a super fan when it comes to the book, and I will not hide it. But yes, thank you so much. I know we ran late, but I really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be talking as more unfolds as you publish more and more books. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. You will be one of my first ARC readers for all my future books. I will always make sure you've got an early copy. But absolutely, again, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Lee. Have a good night.
You too.